Action RPGs wouldn't be where they are without 1997's Diablo, created by then Condor Games, who became Blizzard North, who then had its original founders leaving the company after creating the iconic title and its equally majestic sequel, Diablo 2, and its expansion, Lords of Destruction. Diablo 3 then came out in 2012, first to lukewarm responses, thanks Error 37 and Real Money Auction House, then to eventual praise and applause with the expansion Reaper of Souls. And Diablo Immortal? Well...
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
So, 10 years later, we now have the next mothership entry, Diablo 4, that's getting quite a bit of media and PR hype as of late. Not just because it's coming out in a few months' time. Probably because of the hoo-ha Activision Blizzard has gone through, hoping a big anticipated AAA title can tide the controversy over. It won't. But at the very least, you can tell the devs have worked really hard in making Part 4 of the demon-slaying, genre-defining series stand out a bit more. But are these good changes or bad changes? Well, you're lucky that I've played the series quite a bit, along with other action RPGs, because I really do love that isometric gear-dependent horde butt-kicking genre. Just grinding in these games really put me in a zen mood. It's got a lot to do with the simplicity and the sounds. Oh, those magical drops. In any case, myself and the Kakuchopurei team did play a lot of Diablo 4 open beta in the past weekend, the early access mode, and the open beta weekend, where a ton more people just came in and, well, long queue times, what are you gonna do, right? And yeah, after playing through all that, maxing out all the 5 classes, and seeing what Act 1 has to offer, here are our humble thoughts. Think of this as a review in progress, if you will. Maybe. A lot can change between the current build and the final build, for all you know. It's like a couple of months until June 6th anyway. Hopefully this impressions video we're doing from us is enough to satiate your hunger for this year's possibly stellar action RPG from a AAA publisher. Emphasis on the possibly. And speaking of hungry, allow me to point you to this video's fantastic sponsor, Factor 75. Factor delivers fresh, ready-made meals delivered to your doorstep. Factor's chef-created meals are fresh, never frozen, and designed by dietitians to ensure every meal is packed with premium, science-backed nutritional quality. Just talking about the action RPG grind does make me worry about prepping food before I get really hungry. But that's the beauty of Factor. Factor saves time and alleviates stress. No prep, no mess. Factor cuts out stressful meal planning and extensive prepping, so meals come together in minutes. As someone who has to game quite a lot and has to meet deadlines for content, Factor's timeliness and delicious menu, which is updated weekly and includes 27 plus meals and 34 plus add-on options, just gels with us so well, like a bone spike up a demon's. If you want to get into this primal ancient tiered offer, use Kakuchopurei's special link that's on the screen right now, or go to go.factor75.com and use code FACTORSE33264 for 50% off your first box. Factor. Fresh ready-made meals delivered to your doorstep with no prep and no mess. Now, on with the good and bad of the Diablo 4 beta. The action feels pretty good so far. This is probably one of 2023's most solid action RPG efforts in terms of controls. You know, the whole thing where you click things and move around, kill things, do the spells, easy stuff. And the feedback whenever you attack or receive a pounding is also very high level. I mean, given the big team working on the game, it is expected, but damn, it's pretty impressive. Even if the lag spikes here and there, which is a normal thing for these kind of open betas, I can still see the quality and the build and the feedback being really good. It's a hell of a sight, pun intended. That's why I have to play with a keyboard and mouse setup where it just feels just right. The game is going for its dark and moody vibe a la Diablo 2, but with a richer palette while maintaining its dread. Yet the game's trademark loot sounds, potion bubbles, and the plethora of confirmed attacks and the following death throws, flesh ripping, are all prevalent and amplified tenfold. Part of the action RPG's fun is the sound design, akin to how slot machines reward players. Diablo 4 has no problems with that bit with the sound of loot dropping, enemies dying, and even the ambience when wandering all around one of Sanctuary's snowy, foresty areas, or in the hellish dungeons filled with cockroach legs and flailing tendrils. In any case, the core gameplay loop just feels so good to play and control and experience, from the get-go up until the beta's level cap of 25. So props for making that feel right. And let's move on to the really one ignored part of Diablo, the storyline. If there's one thing to comment on Diablo is that its story isn't all that fleshed out unless you keep digging up its lore with supplementary books like the Book of Cain or Book of Tyrael. Even Diablo 3's attempt at telling a story feels pretty flat since all the talking is done with talking heads and using the same isometric perspective with only like key cutscenes. As beautiful as they are, they're just very few and far between. There's nothing that just all the little talking heads and isometric bits just take you out of the moment. Diablo 4 changes all of that with the in-game cutscenes. Throughout the game, you come across Lilith's insignias that you can activate to see what happened before you arrived at the proverbial scene of the crime. At one point early in the game, your character gets drugged and is about to be dragged and slaughtered for a ritual just to prove that Diablo's story will take you to many dark places. The whole game's objective boils down to find Lilith and stop her plans. But the game does its best to share Lilith's motives, hints of familial issues between Lilith, her ex-lover Inarius, and her son, Rathma, and how the Horadrim member, Lorath, enters the fray to help you somewhat. Kudos to the voice work portrayed at the key scenes and how they're framed and presented. Although I do suspect that stars like Ralph Ineson and Marina Sirtis are involved. It's not like Activision Blizzard doesn't have the money. After all, they got a gem guy in Diablo 3 played by James Hong. I love to blow stuff up in action games. Action RPGs even more so with the numbers popping up back and forth. So when Diablo 4 presented me with the options to use a rogue who can chain shadow explosions with a dash slashes, a sorcerer who summoned hydras with ample firepower to go with her large AoE fireballs, and a necromancer who has a controlled spread gun style bone shard and a ton of minions at his disposal, I'm spoiled for choice. These three classes showcase the fun to be had during the game's 2 difficulty tiers, and gives a sneak peek at how powerful they can get when at level 25 and with their class specialization skills sorted. The necromancer starts out with the Book of the Dead, where he can customize his skeleton army. The sorcerer can use enchantments to power up their attacks passively using one of their unlocked spells. The rogue has 3 different fighting styles. One is combo points, where you gather up combo energy and then spend them with a core skill, and Sightless Eye, where you got a target, kill it, you get energy. If you fill up that separate energy bar, you get unlimited core energy. So these kind of skills mean you gotta be very ready with your metaphoric trigger fingers. Killing things on sight and getting unlimited barrage opportunities is a really cool feeling to have. No matter which 3 you pick, they're all great to play as, and they all showcase how fun the loot grind can get, especially with friends. We're gonna talk about the 2 other classes, but for now, here's another thing I love: the customizable skill tree. In terms of skills, you can respec from the get-go, provided you have a bit of money, and you'll get more than enough to change up your build on the fly to your heart's content. Want to go melee druid with the werewolf, werebear, shout, and ground pound melee combo? Go right ahead. Want to change back to a storm and hurricane tornado range build because too many enemies have keep away options? Just find a safe spot and reallocate your points from scratch. I suspect the game will get more interesting with its builds once players hit level 70 and go through a couple of Paragon levels, especially with the game's imprint system, where you can find a legendary skill or aspect imprinted onto your gear of choice and go wild. Still, the first 25 levels prove that you can come out with effective playstyles, provided some proper balancing in the final product is done. Another thing I loved, the surprises along the way. When the butcher greeted me during an aspect dungeon quest, I was scared shitless because I was not prepared to deal with this motherfucker. For a big guy, he is really quick. Obviously he took me down, but it did teach me not to take your questing lightly. Ditto the treasure goblin chase down. But hunting them down while dealing with an ever-present mob is one of the most dangerous yet exhilarating things I've done. While the random world quests are fun and all, it's these random boss moments that remind us why action RPGs can still thrill us, especially when you're playing in hardcore mode. Oh, and the world bosses are fun to take down, though this isn't without its issues. Now onto the bad stuff. Not really a fan of the melee and the overall balancing so far. We still have to address the elephants in the room, the barbarian and druid's melee options. Put it simply, they suck. And the game's first act seems to feature a lot of ranged enemies and keep away foes who have evasion options, making the whole closing into the gap thing really hard. The aforementioned necromancer, sorcerer and rogue have no issues since they have projectiles and minions, hydra, skeletons, what have yous, to deal with mobs and said evaders. For those who want the Werewolf Druid or Whirlwind Barbarian build, yeah, I used those builds and I had a rough time going through tier 2 difficulty just because the zoning deck is stacked against me. On the flip side, I feel that the Necromancer is pretty overpowered. To put things in context, the Barbarian and Druid's class specialization quests are locked away in the beta. The Necromancer already has his class specialization perks at the start of the game. He only has to unlock his Golem Summoning skill at level 25. And even then, I'm not sure if he even needs it in that short run of time. I'm also not a fan of the level scaling going on. This ties into the first time I played the game with the Barbarian. The enemies feel like they have more hit points and are more spongy when compared to past Diablo titles. Perhaps the reason why is because it makes scoring a powerful legendary all the more rewarding. As soon as you get that one legendary item, mowing down foes is much easier. This may be fixed in the final product and will feel a lot more apparent when the loot drop rates are balanced. After all, they are increased just for the beta. But it feels like the developer wants to have us experience a slightly tougher time with the game, just like how players felt when playing the first 2 Diablo titles. Again, this is more like a personal preference, but at the same time, maybe enemies could be less spongy, especially on the first tier side of things. But then again, when I get more and more legendaries, I think tier 2 is a bit of a cakewalk, but it really depends. I'm also not a fan of the several quality of life downgrades. There's a huge number of quirks to address here, so let's just go through them in bullet point form. Why do we need to scrap items just to get transmog skins? The last game let us get transmog just by getting the item via random drops. Why go through that extra step, especially when it's destructive? Why isn't there a map overlay for everything beyond the linear dungeons? Why can't we zoom out further to see the whole class skill tree in one screen? Why can low level players enter the world boss arena? There should be a stricter level cap for players who can fight world bosses. Having low level players hang around and do nothing while everyone else do the heavy lifting is a griefing tactic. Please, prevent this. Why can't we see all possible roles at the occultist? I would like to know more what my ability chances are without wasting so much gold on the crapshoot. Blind picks for these sort of mechanics are not fun. Why can't I ping my friends to go to a specific location? Diablo 3 had the bandit system to ping other players. Why can't I just bring that to Diablo 4? Why should gems take out as much slot as gear and items? Why not have a separate tab for gems, especially when you're going to get a heckaton of them in tier 3 or tier 4 post level 70 grinding? Why isn't there a loot filter option? It's 2023 and I know past action RPGs have this system already. And why is it hard to spot elites from regular enemies in this Diablo title? Give them an aura or something to make them stand out. There are many more being brought up on Reddit and also on sites like MaxRollGG and Icy Veins, but so far the ones I listed are my personal picks, which I think everyone else shares in common. So yeah, it's a bit strange why some Diablo 3 and Diablo 2 things that were already in place aren't in Diablo 4. So yeah, I hope you guys can fix that, at least on launch month. And another quirk about the game is how mass multiplayer online it feels. I know it's like a non-issue for some, but it has to be brought up. So we have our non-staple for a Diablo game, a world boss that popped up at specific intervals of the day, or even week. Really, who knows how it works in the final game. While the boss itself is fun with a dedicated party, it does make Diablo as a whole feel like it's trying to match the MMORPG ecosystem that's already laid out by World of Warcraft. This is a bizarre decision if that's the case, considering that Diablo and World of Warcraft are two different types of RPGs and shouldn't be cross-streaming with one another. The open world approach to Diablo is great and all, but just keep the action RPG flavors preserved, and don't turn it into a mess of a hybrid like Lost Ark or some other South Korean MMO garbage. All in all, for the most part, Diablo 4 is a fun action RPG, and its new yet kinda old mechanics feel like a good and fresh step forward. Even with the usual beta kerfuffles like lag spikes, random disconnects, what have yous, the experience so far seems promising and is leaning towards a positive. Having said that, there are a good number of quirks and amateur level nonsense still plaguing this version of the game. Let's hope all these issues get addressed when the game comes out in its final form. Let's hope that all these quirks are ironed out in its launch month, because this might be Activision Blizzard's last stand if its early reception turns sour. I mean, who else still plays Overwatch 2, am I right? Thank you so much for tuning in to our Diablo 4 beta impressions video. If you like more videos like these, do hit that subscribe button and that notification icon to support us. We post new content every week. Bye for now, and may all your loot drops in life be unique.